Commander HFY of the Vorthan Dominion pressed his scaled fingers against the cold metal of the observation deck's railing. Through the reinforced viewing portal, the star system designated as Sol burned bright against the endless black of space. For 3 rotations, his scout fleet had maintained position at the edge of this primitive system, gathering intelligence on the species that dared call themselves humans. The initial reports had been laughable. A single-planet civilization that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology appeared crude, their ships small and inefficient. The Galactic Council had dismissed them as another minor species that would either join the established order or be absorbed by one of the major powers. The Vorthan High Command saw an opportunity for easy expansion. "Status report," HFY commanded, his voice carrying the natural authority that had earned him command of this reconnaissance mission. Subcommander Ilix approached, her tentacles clicking against her data tablet. "Sir, our long-range sensors have detected increased activity around the 3rd planet. The humans appear to be mobilizing their fleet." HFY's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Their entire fleet? How many vessels?" "Initial scans suggest approximately 50 ships, sir. Various classes, but all appearing to be of similar technological level to what we observed during first contact." The commander turned away from the viewing portal, his 4 arms crossing behind his back in the traditional Vorthan pose of contemplation. The intelligence reports painted a clear picture. Humanity possessed basic energy weapons, primitive armor plating, and propulsion systems that were functional but far from impressive. Their largest vessels barely reached 800 meters in length, dwarfed by the Dominion's standard battle cruisers. "Maintain observation protocols," he ordered. "The High Command wants detailed tactical analysis before we proceed with annexation. These humans may be primitive, but we must understand their capabilities fully." As Ilix departed to relay his orders, HFY returned his attention to the distant star. The Vorthan Dominion had conquered 47 species over the past millennium. Each had followed a predictable pattern: initial resistance, gradual recognition of Dominion superiority, and eventual integration into the Empire. The humans would be no different. 3 systems away, aboard the UES Determination, Captain Sarah Chen reviewed the tactical displays with growing concern. The alien scouts had been watching them for days, making no attempt to hide their presence but maintaining distance. Their ships were massive, sleek constructions that radiated an aura of technological supremacy. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez approached her command chair, his expression grim. "Intelligence has finished their analysis of the alien vessels. They're calling them Vorthans based on intercepted communications." "What's our assessment?" Rodriguez activated the holographic display between them. 3-dimensional representations of the alien ships rotated slowly, their specifications flowing alongside. "Each scout vessel is approximately twice the length of our largest battleship. Energy signatures suggest weapons and defensive systems far beyond our current technology. Conservative estimates put their firepower at 10 times our most advanced destroyers." Chen studied the data, her mind working through tactical possibilities. The human fleet numbered 83 vessels, accumulated through decades of gradual expansion and careful resource management. Every ship represented years of construction, thousands of crew members, and the hopes of a species reaching for the stars. "Numbers, Lieutenant Commander. How many ships are they fielding for reconnaissance?" 7 vessels, ma'am, all maintaining position at the system's edge." 7 ships. Chen felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. If their intelligence was accurate, 7 alien vessels possessed more combined firepower than the entire human fleet. Yet something nagged at her, an instinct developed through 20 years of naval service. "Have we detected any offensive movements? Any indication they're preparing to attack?" "Negative, ma'am. They appear to be conducting passive surveillance." Chen nodded slowly. In her experience, predators that possessed overwhelming advantage didn't waste time with extended observation. They attacked swiftly and decisively. The fact that these Vorthans were taking time to study humanity suggested either caution or uncertainty. "Continue monitoring their positions, and prepare the fleet for emergency deployment. All vessels are to maintain ready status." As Rodriguez departed, Chen turned her attention back to the tactical display. The alien ships hung at the system's edge like silent sentinels, their true purpose unknown. But one thing was certain: Humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization was about to determine their species' future. Aboard the Vorthan flagship, tactical analyst Krexnu hunched over his sensor station, compound eyes focused on the incoming data streams. For 6 cycles, he had been monitoring human communications, studying their fleet movements, and analyzing their technology. What he discovered contradicted everything the preliminary reports suggested. "Commander," he called, his voice carrying undertones of confusion. "I'm detecting anomalies in the human vessel configurations." Zephi approached the tactical station, his presence casting a shadow over the analyst. "Explain." Krexnu manipulated his controls, causing a detailed scan of a human battleship to appear on the main display. "Sir, their ship construction appears unusual. The hull plating shows composite materials we haven't encountered before. The energy signatures from their reactor cores are consistent with matter-antimatter reactions, which should be beyond their technological level." The commander leaned closer, studying the readout. "Antimatter, are you certain?" "The spectral analysis is conclusive, sir. Furthermore, their weapon systems don't match our initial assessments. What we interpreted as primitive energy weapons appear to be highly focused particle beams with unusual modulation patterns." Zephi's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Explain how our preliminary scouts could have missed such obvious details." "Sir, with respect, the preliminary surveys were conducted from extreme range. The humans may have been deliberately concealing their true capabilities during those observations." This gave the commander pause. Species that possessed the intelligence to deceive during first contact were significantly more dangerous than those who revealed their full capabilities immediately. The implications suggested a level of strategic thinking that contradicted the primitive civilization designation. "Continue your analysis," Zephi ordered. "I want complete tactical profiles on every human vessel before we proceed." As the commander departed, Krexnu returned his attention to the sensor data. But something else caught his attention: energy buildups throughout the human fleet that suggested they were preparing for combat deployment. The readings were subtle, easily missed by casual observation, but unmistakable to a trained analyst. The humans knew they were being watched. More concerning, they were preparing for war. Captain Chen stood in the Determination's war room, surrounded by her senior staff and holographic representations of fleet commanders from across the system. The assembled faces reflected the gravity of their situation: humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and all indications suggested hostile intent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of command, "we're facing an unprecedented situation. The alien fleet has maintained observation posts for 72 hours. Intelligence suggests they possess significant technological advantages." Admiral Harrison, commanding officer of the UES Sovereign, leaned forward in his holographic projection. "Captain Chen, what's your assessment of their intentions?" "Based on their positioning and behavior patterns, I believe they're conducting pre-invasion reconnaissance. They're gathering tactical intelligence while assuming we pose minimal threat." Commander Walsh of the destroyer group spoke up. "Ma'am, if their technology is as advanced as suggested, do we have any chance in direct confrontation?" Chen paused, considering her words carefully, the question every person in the room was thinking but afraid to voice. "Commander, our analysis suggests conventional engagement would be challenging. However, I believe we possess certain advantages they haven't accounted for." She activated the central display, showing the current fleet disposition. 83 vessels arranged in defensive formations throughout the inner system, each ship representing the pinnacle of human engineering and determination. "First, they're underestimating our technological capabilities. Our intelligence indicates they believe we're still using fusion reactors and chemical propellants. They don't know about Project Prometheus." Several commanders exchanged glances. Project Prometheus had been humanity's greatest secret for the past decade: the development of compact antimatter reactors and revolutionary propulsion systems. Only Fleet Command and senior engineering staff knew the full extent of human capabilities. Second, they're conducting reconnaissance with only 7 vessels. This suggests either extreme confidence or limited resources. Either way, it presents opportunities. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. "What are you proposing, Captain?" Chen's expression hardened with resolve. We're going to show them exactly what humanity is capable of, but we need to be smart about it. If we reveal our full strength too early, they'll simply call for reinforcements. We need to make them believe they understand our capabilities while preparing for decisive action. The holographic figures around the table reflected varying degrees of concern and determination. The weight of representing their entire species in this first contact scenario was not lost on any of them. All fleet commanders will receive detailed tactical briefings within the hour, Chen continued. We're going to operate under the assumption that this is the prelude to invasion. Every ship, every crew member, every weapon system needs to be ready for immediate deployment. As the conference concluded and the holograms flickered out one by one, Chen remained in the war room, staring at the tactical display. 7 alien ships against 83 human vessels. On paper, the mathematics looked favorable. But she knew that in space combat, technology often mattered more than numbers. What the aliens didn't know, what humanity had kept carefully hidden since achieving interstellar flight, was that human engineering philosophy differed fundamentally from most civilizations. Where others built for efficiency and elegance, humans built for war. Every human ship, from the smallest patrol vessel to the massive battleships, had been designed with one primary consideration: how to fight and win against superior opponents. Now they would discover if that philosophy was enough. Commander HFY stood in the tactical center of his flagship, studying the updated intelligence reports with growing unease. What had begun as a routine reconnaissance mission was revealing complexities that challenged every assumption about this primitive species. "Status of the human fleet," he demanded. "Sir," analyst Krexnu reported, "they've achieved full combat readiness across all vessels. Energy signatures indicate active weapon systems and raised defensive fields." "They know we're here." "Confirmed, sir. Moreover, our deep scans are revealing additional anomalies. Several of their larger vessels show internal configurations that don't match our initial assessments." HFY moved to the primary display, where detailed scans of human ships rotated slowly. The more he studied them, the more questions arose. The hull designs seemed almost organic in their efficiency, with redundant systems and modular construction that suggested extensive combat experience. "How long since this species achieved interstellar flight?" "Approximately 50 standard cycles, sir." 50 cycles. For a species to advance from primitive spaceflight to antimatter reactors and sophisticated fleet tactics in such a brief time span suggested either external assistance or exceptional adaptability. Neither possibility was comforting. "Sir," Communications Officer Trelia interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're requesting communication." HFY considered. Standard Dominion protocol called for minimal contact until subjugation was complete. However, intelligence gathering required understanding their communication patterns and command structure. "Establish communication link, audio only." The bridge fell silent as the transmission connected. When the human voice came through the translators, it carried an unmistakable tone of authority and confidence. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force, commanding the Sol Defense Fleet. You have been conducting surveillance of our system for 3 days. State your intentions." Direct, no deference or fear in her voice. HFY found himself impressed despite his better judgment. "I am Commander HFY of the Vorthan Dominion. We are conducting standard reconnaissance of this system." "Reconnaissance typically precedes military action, Commander. Are you here to invade our system?" The question hung in the air. Standard protocol called for intimidation followed by demand for surrender. However, something about the human's tone suggested she was prepared for that response. "Your system falls within the Dominion's expansion sphere," HFY replied carefully. "All species in this region must acknowledge Dominion authority." "I see, and what happens to species that refuse?" "Refusal is not typically an option." A pause on the communication line. When the human captain spoke again, her voice carried a subtle shift that sent an instinctive warning through HFY's consciousness. "Commander, I want you to understand something about humanity. We spent our entire recorded history fighting wars. Fighting each other, fighting our environment, fighting for survival. When we finally achieved spaceflight, we didn't stop being warriors. We just found bigger battlefields." "Captain, you appear to misunderstand the situation. You command 83 vessels. We represent the advanced scouts of an empire spanning hundreds of systems. Numbers matter, Commander, but so does determination. You're about to discover that humans have a very particular approach to warfare. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never want to fight us again. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Vorthan bridge in silence. HFY stared at the communication console, processing the implications of what he'd just heard. In all his experience, primitive species either begged for mercy or issued empty threats. This human captain had done neither. She had issued a promise. "Sir," Krexnu spoke quietly, "I'm detecting energy buildups throughout their fleet. They appear to be charging weapons and preparing for combat." HFY nodded slowly. "Send a priority message to High Command. Inform them that the human situation requires immediate reevaluation. We may need additional resources." As his crew worked to comply, the commander continued studying the tactical displays. 7 Vorthan ships against 83 human vessels. The mathematics still favored Dominion technology, but something in the human captain's voice suggested she understood something he didn't. In the depths of space, 2 civilizations prepared for a confrontation that would determine the fate of an entire species. The Vorthans possessed superior technology and the confidence of 1,000 victories. The humans possessed something else entirely, the desperate fury of a species that had clawed its way to the stars and refused to be pushed back into the dark. The stage was set for humanity's first real test among the stars. What happened next would echo through galactic history for generations to come. The silence following Captain Chen's transmission stretched across the void like a taut wire ready to snap. Aboard the UES Determination, the bridge crew maintained their stations with the practiced efficiency of veterans, though most had never seen combat beyond training simulations. Today would change that forever. "Tactical status on the alien formation," Chen commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez consulted his displays. "Ma'am, they're maintaining position at the system's edge. No significant movement, but we're detecting increased energy signatures from their vessels. They appear to be charging weapon systems." Chen nodded grimly. She had hoped the direct communication might give the aliens pause, perhaps even convince them to reconsider their apparent invasion plans. Instead, it seemed to have confirmed their hostile intentions. "Communications, patch me through to Admiral Harrison and the fleet commanders. Priority Alpha." Within moments, holographic projections of the senior commanders materialized around the bridge. Each face reflected the same mixture of determination and barely controlled fear that Chen felt in her own chest. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "the aliens have confirmed hostile intent. They're preparing to engage. All ships are to implement Protocol 7 immediately." Admiral Harrison's projection leaned forward. "Sarah, are you certain about this? Once we reveal our true capabilities, there's no going back." Chen looked out at the tactical display showing the positions of both fleets. 7 alien vessels against the entire human space force. The odds were impossible to calculate without knowing their exact technological capabilities, but every instinct told her that traditional tactics would fail. "Admiral, they came here to conquer us. They've made that clear. We can either fight them with everything we have, or we can surrender and hope they're merciful. Given galactic history, I don't like our chances with the second option." Commander Walsh of the Destroyer Squadron spoke up. "Ma'am, what about evacuation protocols if we can't stop them here?" "There is no fallback position," Chen interrupted firmly. "Earth is behind us. Our colonies are scattered and defenseless. If we don't stop them here now, then humanity becomes another footnote in their empire's expansion." The weight of that statement settled over the assembled commanders. Every person in the fleet understood the stakes, but hearing it voiced so clearly brought the reality into sharp focus. "Protocol 7 is approved," Admiral Harrison confirmed. "All ships will receive their specific assignments within 10 minutes. May God help us all." As the holograms flickered out, Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Rodriguez, signal all ships. Begin Phase 1 deployment." Throughout the Sol system, the human fleet began to move with a precision that had taken decades to perfect. What the Vorthans observed was a standard defensive formation, ships taking predictable positions around the inner planets and major installations. What they couldn't see were the subtle adjustments, the careful positioning that would enable tactics no alien civilization had ever encountered. Aboard his flagship, Commander HFY watched the human fleet deployment with growing satisfaction. Tactical analysis of their formation. Analyst Krexnu studied the displays carefully. Sir, they're implementing a standard defensive perimeter. Ships positioned to protect their primary world and major installations. Nothing unexpected for a primitive civilization facing superior forces. Estimated time to optimal engagement range. At current approach speed, approximately 2 standard hours, sir. HFY nodded. 2 hours to end this minor inconvenience and add another system to the Dominion. The humans were moving exactly as predicted, desperate to protect their homeworld, spreading their forces thin across multiple defensive positions. Signal the fleet, prepare for engagement. Standard suppression tactics will eliminate their ability to resist, then demand surrender. As his orders filtered through the Vorthan fleet, HFY felt the familiar anticipation of victory. 47 conquered species had taught him the patterns of warfare. Initial resistance, gradual recognition of superiority, eventual capitulation. The humans would follow the same path. What he didn't know was that humanity had spent the past 50 years studying those same 47 conquests, analyzing Vorthan tactics, and preparing for exactly this scenario. Deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez commanded the stealth frigate UES Ghost. For 3 days, her ship had remained hidden among the tumbling rocks, passive sensors recording every detail of the alien scout's behavior and capabilities. Captain, her sensor officer reported quietly, the main fleet is beginning its approach. 7 vessels in standard Vorthan battle formation. Martinez nodded, studying the tactical information her ship had gathered. The Ghost was one of 12 stealth vessels positioned throughout the system, each invisible to conventional sensors and armed with humanity's most advanced weaponry. Weapons status: all torpedo tubes loaded and ready, ma'am. Antimatter warheads armed and targeted. The stealth frigates represented one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. While the aliens observed the main fleet with its conventional ships and predictable tactics, they remained completely unaware of the advanced vessels hidden throughout the system. Maintain position and ready status. When the signal comes, we'll have one chance to make this work. Aboard the UES Determination, Captain Chen watched the approaching alien fleet with calculated patience. Her tactical display showed the enemy vessels closing distance, their formation textbook perfect for overwhelming a defensive position. Exactly what she had hoped to see. Ma'am, Rodriguez reported, enemy fleet will reach engagement range in 30 minutes. They're maintaining standard approach vector. Perfect, signal Admiral Harrison. Execute Phase 2. Throughout the system, the second phase of humanity's defensive plan began to unfold. What appeared to be a desperate repositioning of forces was actually a carefully orchestrated deception. Ships that seemed to be retreating were actually moving into optimal firing positions. Vessels that appeared damaged or disabled were actually running silent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vorthan fleet continued its approach, confident in their technological superiority and tactical expertise. Their sensors detected human ships moving in apparent panic defensive formations, collapsing under the pressure of their advance. Commander HFY observed the human response with satisfaction. They're breaking formation, typical response when facing overwhelming force. Sir, Krexnu reported, several human vessels appear to be attempting to flee the system. Should we pursue? No, let them run. Fear will spread faster than any weapon. Once we demonstrate our power here, other human colonies will surrender without resistance. The commander's confidence was absolute. 7 Vorthan vessels against a disorganized, panicking human fleet. The outcome was predetermined. At precisely 1400 hours Solar Standard Time, the Vorthan fleet crossed into what humans had designated as extreme engagement range. Their weapons began charging, energy signatures building toward devastating potential. In response, the human fleet appeared to take increasingly desperate defensive measures. Sir, Communications Officer Trelia announced, the humans are transmitting multiple frequencies, apparently coordinating their retreat. HFY almost smiled. Let them coordinate, it won't help them. What the Vorthons were actually intercepting were coded signals between human ships, but not retreat orders. Instead, they were final targeting solutions, synchronized timing commands, and confirmation codes for weapons systems the aliens had never encountered. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of a chess master preparing for checkmate. Every piece was in position. Every calculation had been verified. The moment of truth had finally arrived. "All stations, this is the Admiral," Harrison's voice carried across fleet communications. "Humanity's future hangs in the balance. Show them what we're made of. Execute Phoenix Rising." Across the Sol system, 83 human ships simultaneously revealed their true capabilities. The first indication that something had gone wrong came from the Vorthon sensor stations. Energy signatures throughout the human fleet spiked far beyond anything their preliminary reconnaissance had detected. Ships that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly reversed course with acceleration that should have been impossible. Vessels that seemed disabled suddenly blazed to life, with power levels matching Dominion technology. "Sir," Krexnu called out in alarm, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their fleet. Their reactor signatures are—" "That's impossible." On the tactical display, what had appeared to be a disorganized retreat transformed into a perfectly coordinated attack formation. Human ships moved with precision that spoke of years of practice and technological sophistication far beyond initial estimates. "How many vessels are we actually facing?" HFY demanded. "Sir, I count 83 active combatants, but these aren't the primitive ships we observed during reconnaissance. Energy signatures indicate antimatter reactors, advanced armor composites, and weapons systems comparable to our own technology." Commander HFY felt cold realization wash over him. The humans hadn't been fleeing. They had been maneuvering into attack positions. Every retreat had been calculated, every apparent weakness had been deception. "Shields to maximum, all weapons to battle ready. Signal the Dominion High Command immediately." But even as his orders went out, HFY knew they were already too late. The humans had planned this engagement down to the smallest detail, and they had achieved perfect tactical surprise. The first human strike came from the stealth frigates hidden throughout the system. 12 ships that the Vorthons had never detected suddenly appeared on sensors, launching volleys of antimatter torpedoes at point-blank range. The weapons were small compared to capital ship armaments, but their targeting was perfect and their timing devastating. Torpedo after torpedo slammed into the rear Vorthon vessels before their shields could fully activate. The explosions lit up the void like miniature suns, each detonation representing the complete annihilation of matter and antimatter at the molecular level. "Damage report," HFY shouted over the chaos of his bridge. "Sir, the Conquest and Domination are heavily damaged. Multiple hull breaches, reactor containment failing. The Thunder shows moderate damage but is still combat capable. 2 ships critically damaged in the opening seconds of combat." The Vorthons had faced determined resistance before, but nothing like the coordination and technological sophistication they were experiencing now. "Return fire, target the largest human vessels." Vorthon energy weapons lanced out across space, brilliant beams of coherent energy capable of cutting through most known armor materials. They struck human ships with devastating force, but the results were far from what HFY expected. Instead of catastrophic damage, the human vessels absorbed the hits with advanced deflector shields and armor plating that scattered the energy into harmless radiation. Ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting, their return fire growing more accurate with each exchange. "Sir," Krexnu reported with growing alarm, "the human vessels are using adaptive shielding. Our weapons are losing effectiveness with each hit." Adaptive shielding, technology that analyzed incoming energy patterns and adjusted defensive frequencies to provide maximum protection. The Dominion possessed similar systems, but only on their most advanced capital ships. How is this possible? Intelligence indicated they were decades behind our technological level. "Sir, I believe we were deliberately misled. The humans have been concealing their true capabilities since first contact." The tactical display showed a battle that was rapidly spiraling out of Dominion control. What should have been a quick victory against primitive opponents had become a desperate fight for survival against a technologically sophisticated and tactically brilliant enemy. The human fleet moved with deadly precision, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others in a dance of destruction that spoke of extensive combat experience. Their weapons were devastating, their defenses nearly impenetrable, and their tactics unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. Commander HFY realized with growing horror that he wasn't facing a primitive civilization. He was facing a species that had been preparing for this exact scenario for decades, and they held every advantage except raw numbers. The battle for Sol had only just begun, but already the outcome was far from certain. Humanity had shown their true face to the galaxy, and it was the face of a warrior species that refused to bow to superior force. The war for humanity's survival had begun in earnest. The space around Sol had transformed into a deadly light show of energy beams, missile trails, and brilliant explosions that illuminated the void like an artificial aurora. What had begun as a simple reconnaissance mission for the Vorthans had become a nightmare of technological surprise and tactical brilliance. Commander HFY gripped the command rails of his flagship as another wave of human torpedoes impacted their shields. The protective barriers flickered and sparked, energy levels dropping dangerously low despite their advanced technology. "Shield status," he barked over the chaos of battle. "Sir, we're down to 60% strength and falling. The human weapons are using some kind of phased detonation pattern that's overloading our energy grids." HFY's mandibles clicked in frustration and growing fear. Phased detonation meant the humans weren't just throwing explosive power at their shields. They were studying the defensive frequencies in real time and adjusting their weapons to cause maximum disruption. This level of technological sophistication should have been impossible for a species they'd classified as primitive. Tactical analysis. How are they coordinating their attacks so precisely? Analyst Krexnu worked frantically at his station, trying to make sense of the human fleet movements. "Sir, they're using some form of quantum entanglement communication. No transmission delays, no signals we can intercept or jam. Every ship in their fleet is operating as a single tactical unit." The implications sent a chill through HFY's core. Quantum entanglement communication was theoretical even for the Dominion's most advanced research divisions. If the humans had not only developed the technology but deployed it fleet-wide, their technological capabilities were far beyond anything the preliminary scouts had reported. Another explosion rocked the flagship as human particle beams found gaps in their defensive screen. The bridge lights flickered, and several control stations sparked ominously. "Sir," engineering reported through the internal communication system, "reactor efficiency is down to 80%. We're taking damage to primary systems." This was impossible. Vorthan technology was supposed to be superior. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their shields more advanced. Yet somehow the human fleet was not just holding its own, it was winning. Aboard the UES Determination, Captain Chen moved through her bridge with the controlled urgency of a commander executing a plan years in the making. Every simulation, every tactical exercise, every advancement in human technology had been building toward this moment. Tactical status on the enemy fleet. "Ma'am, 2 alien vessels are heavily damaged and withdrawing from combat. 3 more show moderate damage but are still fighting. The remaining 2 appear to be their command ships and are pulling back to maximum engagement range." Chen nodded with grim satisfaction. The opening phases of the battle had gone exactly as planned. The stealth frigate attacks had caught the enemy completely off guard, while the main fleet's coordinated assault had prevented them from establishing effective defensive positions. "What's our status?" 14 ships with minor damage, 6 with moderate damage requiring repairs. The destroyer UES Defiant took heavy hits but is still combat capable. Overall fleet effectiveness at 87%. Remarkable numbers considering they were fighting an enemy that should have possessed overwhelming technological superiority. The key had been preparation and the willingness to sacrifice traditional military thinking in favor of unconventional tactics. "Admiral Harrison, please respond." Chen activated fleet communications. The Admiral's weathered face appeared on the holographic projector, his expression showing both pride and concern. "Outstanding work, Sarah. The enemy is reeling, but they're regrouping at long range. What's your assessment?" "Sir, they're adapting faster than our projections indicated. Their shields are learning to counter our weapons, and their long-range capabilities are still superior to ours. We need to press the attack while we maintain the initiative." Harrison nodded slowly. "Agreed, but remember we can't afford to take heavy losses if this is just an advance force." "Understood, sir. Initiating Phase 3. Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Rodriguez, signal the wolf pack. Time to show these aliens what humans learned from centuries of submarine warfare." Throughout the asteroid belt and outer planets, the third element of humanity's defensive strategy activated. Wolf pack squadrons, small, fast attack vessels built for stealth and devastating hit-and-run attacks, began their approach toward the regrouping Vorthan fleet. Each wolf pack ship carried a crew of only 12, but they were equipped with humanity's most advanced propulsion systems and armed with weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses human intelligence had identified in Dominion technology. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos commanded Wolf Pack Alpha from the bridge of the UES Stalker. Her ship was barely 200 meters long, a fraction the size of the alien vessels, but built for speed and stealth rather than straight combat power. "Sensor data from the main fleet indicates the enemy is clustering their damaged ships in the center of their formation," her tactical officer reported. "Classic defensive posture." Santos smiled grimly. Classic defensive postures worked well against conventional enemies. They were much less effective against opponents who refused to fight conventionally. "All Wolfpack units, this is Alpha Leader. Execute Disruption Pattern 7. Show them what happens when they try to form up against human naval tactics." The Wolfpack squadrons accelerated toward the Vorthan fleet, their ships moving in unpredictable patterns that made targeting extremely difficult. As they closed distance, they split into individual attack runs, each vessel approaching from a different vector. Commander HFY watched in growing alarm as the sensor displays showed dozens of small human vessels approaching at high speed. Their erratic movement patterns made accurate targeting nearly impossible, and their small size meant that even direct hits might not disable them. "How many of these attack craft do they have?" he demanded. "Sir, I count 36 individual vessels approaching from multiple vectors. They're too small for effective long-range engagement, but if they reach close combat range..." HFY understood the implications. Small, fast ships could get inside the effective range of capital ship weapons, where their speed and maneuverability would make them extremely difficult targets. Worse, they could attack critical systems that larger vessels couldn't effectively defend. "All ships prepare for close engagement. Focus fire on the attack craft. Don't let them reach effective range." Vorthan energy weapons began tracking the approaching Wolf-Pack ships, brilliant beams of destruction reaching out across space. Several of the small vessels disappeared in brief flares of light, their hulls unable to withstand direct hits from capital ship armaments. But for every Wolf-Pack ship destroyed, 3 more continued their approach. The humans had calculated acceptable losses and built their tactics around overwhelming the enemy's ability to target every threat simultaneously. The first Wolf-Pack vessels reached effective range and immediately demonstrated why human military doctrine emphasized adaptability over raw firepower. Instead of engaging the heavily armed and armored frontal sections of the Vorthan ships, they targeted sensor arrays, communication systems, and maneuvering thrusters. Each attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption while minimizing exposure to return fire. The humans weren't trying to destroy the alien ships immediately. They were systematically degrading their ability to fight effectively. "Sir, we're losing sensor coverage on the port side," Krexnu reported as another human attack run disabled a primary sensor array. "These coordinated attacks are targeting our most critical systems." HFY felt the tactical situation slipping away from him entirely. The humans were fighting a 3-dimensional battle using tactics he'd never encountered. Large ships providing covering fire while small attack craft exploited every weakness, all coordinated through communication systems that operated faster than thought itself. "Signal the Dominion Fleet Command. Emergency priority. Request immediate reinforcement." "Sir, long-range communications are being jammed. The human attacks have damaged our quantum transmitters." The full scope of the human strategy was becoming clear. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to isolate and destroy his entire reconnaissance force before they could report back to the Dominion. Aboard the UES Determination, Captain Chen watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The battle was proceeding according to plan, but she knew the critical phase was just beginning. "Ma'am," Rodriguez reported, "wolf pack attacks have reduced enemy sensor effectiveness by approximately 40%. Their communication systems are severely degraded." "Perfect, signal Admiral Harrison. Execute final phase." What happened next would have seemed impossible to any observer familiar with conventional space warfare. The human fleet, instead of maintaining safe distance and continuing their systematic attacks, began accelerating directly toward the enemy formation. Every tactical manual in the galaxy warned against closing to point-blank range with superior opponents. Energy weapons became devastatingly effective at short range, and the advantage of speed and maneuverability was minimized. But humanity had never been bound by conventional tactical wisdom. "All ships," Admiral Harrison's voice carried across fleet communications, "this is where we discover what we're really made of, close to knife-fighting range. Show them that humans don't just fight to win, we fight to ensure our enemies never forget what it costs to threaten our home." The human fleet accelerated toward the alien formation with the desperate courage of a species that understood they were fighting for their very existence. Every ship, from the massive battleships to the smallest destroyers, committed to a close-range engagement that would be decided by will and determination as much as technology. Commander HFY watched in disbelief as the human fleet charged directly into his formation. "They're insane," he breathed. "They can't possibly survive close-range combat with capital ships." But even as he spoke, HFY realized the humans had calculated something he hadn't considered. At close range, his larger ships would have difficulty targeting human vessels without risking damage to their own forces. The humans were deliberately creating a chaotic melee where their superior numbers and coordination would be decisive. "All ships prepare for close engagement. Focus fire on their capital ships. Don't let them close the distance." But it was too late. The human fleet was already within the Vorthan defensive perimeter, their ships moving between the alien vessels with precision that spoke of extensive training in exactly this type of engagement. The battle for Sol was about to enter its final phase, and humanity was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Energy beams crossed space at point-blank range, shields flared and collapsed, and the void between worlds became a furnace where two civilizations would determine which species had the greater will to survive. The Vorthans had superior technology and centuries of conquest behind them, but the humans had something else entirely: the desperate fury of a species that had clawed its way from the surface of a single world to the stars themselves and refused to be pushed back into the darkness. Space around Sol had become a hellscape of energy discharge and twisted metal. Ships maneuvered at distances measured in kilometers rather than the thousands of kilometers typical of deep space engagement. At such close range, every shot was potentially devastating, every maneuver a matter of life and death for thousands of crew members. Commander HFY's flagship shuddered as another barrage of human particle beams struck their port shields. The protective barriers were failing under the sustained assault, energy readings dropping into critical ranges despite their advanced technology. "Sir, the subjugation has lost primary power," Communications Officer Trelia reported through the chaos. "The conquest is requesting permission to withdraw. They're reporting critical damage to life support systems." HFY watched his tactical display with growing horror. 3 of his 7 ships were effectively out of the fight, damaged beyond combat capability. The remaining 4 were fighting desperately against a human fleet that seemed to grow more coordinated and effective with each passing minute. "How many human ships have we destroyed?" "Sir, confirmed kills on 17 human vessels. However, they still have over 60 ships in combat-ready status." 17 ships. In a normal engagement, destroying a quarter of an enemy fleet would be considered significant success. Against the humans, it felt like a hollow victory. They were fighting with a ferocity and determination that defied conventional military logic. "Sir," Analyst Krexnu called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the human battleship formations. They're charging some kind of synchronized weapon system. On the tactical display, the largest human ships were moving into perfect geometric formation, their energy signatures spiking far beyond anything previously detected. Whatever they were preparing to unleash, it required the combined power of multiple capital ships. Evasive maneuvers, all ships scatter formation. But even as HFY's orders went out, he realized the humans had anticipated this response. Smaller human vessels moved to block escape routes, while the Wolf Pack squadrons continued their devastating hit-and-run attacks on critical systems. Aboard the UES Determination, Captain Chen stood at the center of a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. The close-range engagement had been brutal for both sides, but the human fleet's superior coordination was beginning to tell. "Ma'am," Rodriguez reported, "all battleships report ready for synchronized firing. Target acquisition complete." Chen looked at the tactical display showing the enemy formation. The alien ships were powerful and well-designed, but they were operating as individual vessels rather than a coordinated fleet. That fundamental difference in tactical philosophy was about to prove decisive. "All battleship commanders, this is Chen. Fire for effect." What happened next had been theoretical until this moment. Multiple antimatter reactors synchronizing their output to power a single devastating weapon system. The energy requirements were enormous, the coordination requirements precise to the nanosecond, and the destructive potential beyond anything previously deployed in space combat. 5 human battleships fired simultaneously, their energy beams perfectly synchronized and targeted at a single point in space. Where they converged, the very fabric of spacetime buckled under the incredible energy density. The effect was like a miniature star being born and dying in the span of seconds. The Vorthan heavy cruiser Domination happened to be positioned exactly at the convergence point. The ship's advanced shields, designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in the Dominion arsenal, lasted approximately 0.3 seconds before complete failure. The hull armor, composed of materials harder than diamond, vaporized instantly. The ship itself ceased to exist in any meaningful sense, reduced to its component atoms in a flash of light visible from the inner planets. Commander HFY stared at his tactical display in absolute shock. An entire heavy cruiser, 800 meters of advanced technology and 5,000 crew members, had been completely destroyed in less than a second. "How is that possible?" he whispered. "Sir," Krexnu's voice was shaky with fear. "The humans just demonstrated synchronized energy projection on a scale I didn't think was possible. The power requirements alone should have overloaded their reactor systems." But the human ships continued fighting with undiminished effectiveness, their energy levels stable despite the incredible output they had just demonstrated. Somehow, they had solved the engineering challenges that made such weapons theoretical rather than practical. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet commander." HFY almost refused the communication, but something compelled him to accept. Captain Chen's voice came through the translators with the same calm authority she had displayed throughout the engagement. "Commander HFY, you've seen what human technology is capable of. Your fleet is defeated. I'm offering you one opportunity to withdraw from this system and return to your empire with a message." The Vorthan commander looked at his tactical display. 3 ships destroyed or disabled, the others damaged and fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Military logic dictated immediate withdrawal, but Dominion doctrine forbade retreat without explicit permission from high command. "Captain Chen, the Vorthan Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species." A pause on the communication channel. When Chen responded, her voice carried undertones that sent instinctive warning signals through HFY's consciousness. "Commander, let me clarify something for you. We are not a primitive species. We are a warrior species that has been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was waiting for us. You came here to conquer us. Instead, you're going to return to your empire and tell them exactly what it costs to threaten humanity. And if I refuse, then you don't return at all. And when your empire sends investigators to determine what happened to your fleet, they'll find wreckage orbiting our star as a permanent reminder that humans do not surrender." The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthan bridge in silence. HFY studied his remaining options with the growing realization that he had fundamentally misunderstood both the situation and his opponents. The humans weren't fighting a defensive action. They were fighting a demonstration. Every tactic, every weapon system, every coordinated maneuver had been designed to send a message to the Dominion. Humanity was not prey to be hunted, but a predator that had been waiting for the hunt to begin. "Sir," engineering reported, "the humans are jamming our long-range communications, but I believe I can get a short burst transmission through to Dominion Command. Should I signal for reinforcements?" Zephi considered the question carefully. Reinforcements would mean a full-scale war between the Dominion and humanity. Based on what he had witnessed, such a conflict would be far costlier than anyone in high command could imagine. "No," he said finally. "Signal all remaining ships. We're withdrawing from the system." "Sir, Dominion protocol requires." "Protocol assumes we're dealing with a primitive civilization," Zephi interrupted. "We're not. Signal the withdrawal." Throughout the battered remains of the Vorthan reconnaissance fleet, the order to retreat was received with relief and confusion in equal measure. Ships that had expected easy victory began limping toward the edge of the system, their hulls scarred and their confidence shattered. The human fleet allowed the withdrawal without pursuit, though their weapons remained trained on the alien ships throughout their departure. It was a gesture that spoke of confidence rather than mercy. They were allowing the survivors to return with their message. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Determination, watching the tactical display as the alien ships reached the edge of the system and engaged their faster-than-light drives. Around her, the bridge crew maintained their stations despite the exhaustion that came with surviving their first real space battle. "Ma'am," Rodriguez reported, "all enemy vessels have cleared the system. Long-range sensors confirm they're headed back toward Dominion space." "Damage report." "Fleet-wide casualties are lighter than projected. 23 ships destroyed or severely damaged, but the majority of our forces remain combat-capable. Repair operations are already underway." Chen nodded with satisfaction. The cost had been high. Each destroyed ship represented hundreds of lives lost, but the strategic objective had been achieved. The Vorthan Dominion now knew that humanity would not submit quietly to conquest. "Open a channel to Admiral Harrison." The Admiral's hologram appeared, his expression showing both exhaustion and pride. "Sarah, that was brilliantly executed. The entire fleet performed beyond expectations." "Thank you, sir. But we both know this is just the beginning. When they return to their empire, we'll either face a much larger invasion force, or they'll decide we're too dangerous to conquer and try to destroy us entirely." Harrison nodded grimly. "Either way, we've bought ourselves time to prepare, and we've sent a message that will spread throughout their empire. Humanity cannot be conquered easily." "What are our orders, sir?" "Full alert status for all fleets. Begin immediate construction of additional vessels and defensive installations, and prepare the colonies for possible evacuation." Harrison paused, his expression growing more serious. "Sarah, what we've done here today will echo through galactic history. We've announced to the entire galaxy that humanity is ready to fight for our place among the stars." As the hologram disappeared, Chen returned her attention to the tactical display. Space around Sol was littered with debris from the battle, twisted metal, and dispersed energy signatures that marked humanity's first major victory against an advanced alien civilization. But she knew Harrison was right. This was only the beginning. The Vorthan Dominion would not accept defeat easily, and their empire controlled hundreds of systems with resources far beyond anything humanity could match. However, they had proven something important today. Human technology, tactics, and determination could stand against the galaxy's established powers. More importantly, they had demonstrated that humanity would fight with everything they possessed to protect their freedom and independence. In the depths of space, the wreckage of alien ships drifted in silent testimony to a simple truth. Earth's children had grown up, and they were ready to claim their place among the stars, not as subjects or servants, but as equals who would bow to no one. The first shot in humanity's war for galactic independence had been fired, and the echo of that shot would be heard across the galaxy for generations to come. 3 systems away, Commander Zephi sat in his command chair aboard his damaged flagship, composing the report that would change the Dominion's understanding of the galaxy forever. How do you explain to an empire that had conquered 47 species that they had just encountered their first true equals? How do you tell your superiors that the primitive humans they had dismissed were actually a warrior species that had been preparing for galactic war since achieving spaceflight? The answer, he realized, was simple. You tell the truth and let the consequences unfold as they will. The Vorthan Dominion was about to learn that the galaxy was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, and that some species were worth more as allies than as subjects. Whether they would be wise enough to accept that lesson remained to be seen. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, the Vorthan Dominion Council of War convened in their most secure facility, deep within the heart of their empire. The massive chamber, carved from a single asteroid and reinforced with the most advanced materials known to science, had witnessed the planning of countless conquests over the past millennium. Today, however, the assembled military leaders faced something unprecedented, their first major defeat by a previously unknown species. High Admiral Thexver stood at the center of the chamber, his imposing frame casting shadows across the tactical displays that surrounded the assembly. Around him, 47 of the Dominion's most senior commanders waited in tense silence for his analysis of what was being called the Sol Incident. Esteemed commanders, Thexver began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. 3 rotations ago, our reconnaissance fleet encountered organized resistance in the Sol system. What should have been a routine survey mission resulted in the destruction of 3 heavy cruisers and severe damage to the remaining vessels. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled commanders. In over 1,000 years of expansion, the Dominion had never lost multiple capital ships to a single engagement with an unknown species. Commander HFY, present your report. The scarred veteran stepped forward, his movements still showing the effects of injuries sustained during the battle. His testimony would determine whether the Dominion treated humanity as a significant threat or dismissed them as a lucky anomaly. High Admiral, the intelligence failure was complete. The humans deliberately concealed their true technological capabilities during initial contact. What we observed as primitive ships were actually advanced vessels using deception protocols we had never encountered. Explain the nature of their technology. HFY activated the central holographic display, showing detailed scans of human vessels taken during the engagement. Sir, they possess antimatter reactors comparable to our most advanced systems. Their weapons utilize synchronized energy projection that can combine the output of multiple ships into a single devastating attack. Most importantly, they employ quantum entanglement communication that allows instantaneous coordination across their entire fleet. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Quantum entanglement communication was theoretical even for the Dominion's research divisions. If the humans had not only developed the technology but deployed it fleet-wide, their scientific capabilities were extraordinary. What is your assessment of their military doctrine? Sir, they fight like a species that has spent centuries preparing for exactly this type of engagement. Every tactic they employed suggested extensive study of Dominion methods. They knew our weaknesses before we knew theirs. High Admiral Thexver studied the tactical data with growing concern. Casualties. 17 human ships confirmed destroyed. However, our analysis suggests they considered these acceptable losses for the strategic objective of demonstrating their capabilities. Strategic objective. HFY's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, I believe the entire engagement was designed as a message to the Dominion. They were not fighting for survival. They were fighting to establish their position as equals rather than subjects. The chamber erupted in agitated discussion. The concept of a species deliberately provoking the Dominion to establish diplomatic standing was unprecedented. Every civilization they had encountered either submitted immediately or fought desperately for survival. Silence, Thexver commanded. Commander HFY, what is your recommendation regarding future human contact? The question every being in the chamber had been dreading. HFY straightened, knowing his next words would determine the fate of 2 civilizations. High Admiral, based on what I observed, a full-scale invasion of human space would cost us hundreds of ships and potentially millions of casualties. They possess technology we don't fully understand, tactics we've never encountered, and a level of determination that suggests they would fight to extinction rather than surrender. Are you suggesting the Dominion cannot defeat these humans? Sir, I am suggesting that defeating them would cost far more than conquering them would be worth. However, I also believe they might be more valuable as allies than as subjects. The chamber fell into stunned silence. In over a millennium of expansion, no Dominion commander had ever suggested seeking alliance with an unknown species rather than conquest. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity was preparing for the inevitable Dominion response. The victory against the Scout fleet had provided valuable intelligence about alien technology and tactics, but everyone understood it was merely the opening move in a much larger game. Captain Chen stood in the newly constructed command center on Luna, studying holographic displays that showed the current state of human space defenses. In the 3 months since the battle, construction had proceeded at unprecedented pace. New ships, advanced weapon systems, and fortified positions throughout human space represented the largest military buildup in the species' history. "Status report," she commanded. Admiral Harrison approached, carrying data tablets filled with construction schedules and tactical analyses. "Sarah, we've completed 47 new vessels using technology reverse-engineered from Vorthan wreckage. The Wolf Pack squadrons have been expanded to 200 ships, and we've established advanced warning stations throughout the outer systems. Intelligence on Dominion activities. Long-range sensors have detected increased fleet movements in their border regions. They're definitely preparing something, but we can't determine if it's an invasion force or diplomatic mission." Chen nodded grimly. The uncertainty was almost worse than confirmed invasion. Humanity had shown they could fight, but no one knew if the Dominion would accept the demonstration or respond with overwhelming force. "What about Project Prometheus?" Harrison's expression grew more serious. "The antimatter manufacturing facilities are operating at maximum capacity. We've also completed the quantum communication network throughout human space. If they come again, we'll be ready. And if they come in numbers we can't handle." The Admiral paused, considering his words carefully. "Then we make sure the cost of conquering us is so high that other species think twice before challenging human independence." 3 systems away from Sol, aboard the Dominion research vessel Enlightenment, Chief Scientist Keldar studied the recovered wreckage from the battle with growing amazement. Every piece of human technology revealed new mysteries that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological development. "Fascinating," she murmured, examining the quantum processing cores recovered from a destroyed human ship. The level of miniaturization was extraordinary, packing computational power equivalent to Dominion capital ship systems into a device no larger than her manipulator appendage. Her research assistant approached carrying additional samples. "Chief Scientist, the antimatter containment systems are unlike anything in our databases. They're using magnetic field configurations that our theoretical models suggested were impossible. Impossible, or simply beyond our current understanding. The distinction may be irrelevant. If we could reverse engineer these systems, our ships could carry 3 times their current antimatter load." Keldar set down her analysis tools and considered the implications. The humans weren't just technologically advanced, they were innovating in directions the Dominion had never explored. Their engineering philosophy seemed to prioritize efficiency and adaptability over the raw power approach favored by most galactic civilizations. "Prepare a complete report for High Command. Include recommendations for immediate research priorities." "Yes, Chief Scientist. Should I include tactical assessments?" "Most definitely. If these humans can develop such advanced technology in isolation, imagine what they might achieve with access to galactic databases and manufacturing facilities." As her assistant departed, Keldar returned her attention to the human technology samples. Each piece told a story of a species that refused to accept limitations, that pushed beyond conventional boundaries to achieve what others considered impossible. She found herself wondering what such a species might accomplish as allies rather than enemies. Back in the Dominion war chamber, High Admiral Thexver had reached his decision. The assembled commanders waited in tense silence as he prepared to announce the course of action that would determine the future relationship between 2 civilizations. After careful consideration of all available intelligence, the Dominion Council has reached a conclusion regarding the human situation. The chamber fell silent, every being present understanding that they were witnessing a historic moment. The humans will be offered full diplomatic recognition as an independent galactic power. We will establish formal contact through traditional diplomatic channels rather than military conquest. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. In over a millennium of expansion, the Dominion had never offered diplomatic recognition to a species they had not first conquered. High Admiral, one of the senior commanders, spoke carefully. This decision sets a precedent that could encourage other species to resist Dominion authority. Commander, the humans have demonstrated that they possess the technological capability and determination to inflict unacceptable casualties in any conquest attempt. More importantly, they have shown innovation that could benefit the Dominion if channeled through alliance rather than subjugation. Thexver activated the central display, showing projections of human technological capabilities. Their quantum communication systems alone could revolutionize Dominion fleet operations. Their antimatter technology could increase our energy efficiency by orders of magnitude. Their tactical innovations could be adapted to strengthen our military capabilities. You're suggesting we learn from them. I'm suggesting that some species are worth more as partners than as subjects. The humans have proven they belong in that category. The decision rippled through the Dominion hierarchy with unprecedented speed. Within days, diplomatic vessels were being prepared for humanity's first official contact with galactic civilization. The species that had been marked for conquest was instead being invited to join the community of independent worlds. Captain Chen received the news while reviewing defensive preparations in the outer system. The quantum communication network that had been built for military coordination now carried the most important message in human history. Captain, Admiral Harrison's voice carried a mixture of amazement and relief. We've received a formal communication from the Vorthan Dominion. They're requesting diplomatic contact and offering recognition as an independent galactic power. Chen stared at the message display, hardly believing what she was reading. They're not coming back with an invasion fleet. Apparently not. According to the transmission, they're sending diplomatic vessels and requesting permission to establish formal relations. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only survived first contact with an advanced alien civilization, they had earned respect and recognition through strength rather than submission. Admiral, prepare responses through appropriate diplomatic channels and maintain our defensive readiness. Independence earned through strength must be maintained the same way. Understood. Sarah, what we accomplished here will be remembered for generations. Humanity just took its place among the stars as equals, not subjects. As Chen looked out at the tactical displays showing human ships patrolling their space, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with responsibility. The battle for Sol had been about more than survival. It had been about establishing humanity's right to exist as a free species in a galaxy full of ancient powers. They had proven that determination, innovation, and the willingness to fight for what you believe in could triumph over raw technological superiority. More importantly, they had shown that some things are worth any sacrifice to preserve. Humanity had reached for the stars and found their place among them, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals who would bow to no one and accept nothing less than the freedom to determine their own destiny. The first chapter of humanity's galactic story was complete. The rest would be written by generations yet to come, armed with the knowledge that their species had the courage to face any challenge and the strength to emerge victorious. In the depths of space, human and alien vessels began the delicate process of establishing formal diplomatic relations. It was the beginning of a new era, built on mutual respect and the understanding that some species earn their independence through the strength of their convictions and their willingness to fight for what they believe in. The galaxy had gained a new power, and the universe would never be quite the same.